On it. Welcome to the Redneck podcast, folks. We're here to talk about shooting. What's on tap tonight, Matt? I know what it is. I saw Dustin's post about some department training you did, right?
Yeah. Yep. I was doing some active shooter training the last couple of weeks with my department.
Right, and you integrated practical shooting into active shooter training.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my question for you. Like, hey, how did you do that? And then what else do we have to talk about, Matt?
And then I think we're going to talk about some dry fire stuff that I've been doing.
Yes, we absolutely are. You've been putting that on Instagram. It's been very nice.
Yeah.
It's been a ton.
It's very boring.
Dry fire?
Lots of hard work.
It'll get you killed in the streets. You know that.
Right.
Hey,
yeah.
Matt, that firing pin was actually broken today.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked a little broke.
There's like a few thousand rounds on that rifle, not a ton. But you told me I had to shoot a lot if I want to get good, so that's what I'm doing.
Who is that who made that upper?
Arrow.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Broke
My
firing pin.
I mean, I've shot a lot and I have 4 of their guns. I haven't had a lot of problems.
No, yeah, I don't know, man. I have never broken a firing pin on an AR for me personally.
No, I've never done that either.
Might have just gotten a bad one, I think.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do. I'm sure you had Dustin, a couple laying around.
So let's jump into this. The active shooter training is.
Yeah.
So obviously that's been a hot topic. You see, like within the training world.
Yep.
Plenty of guys.
Well, no, I was curious. How do you integrate practical shooting concepts into active shooter training?
So we've been doing practical shooting in the department probably the last 3 years or so with my guys and or with the agency, which is about 70 people, and doing a lot of the drills. And so what we did this year is when we started the whole day with a scenario. So they walked right in, they got some equipment, some safety gear and whatever, and they started right into a scenario. And then we broke the day down into little breakout sessions. And a couple of sessions that I worked on was quick movement into the room. And in that session, we had 2 separate rooms. They were both kind of corner fed rooms. And the one room, we just had a guy in there. He had a laser pistol, and we talked a lot about quick movement into the room, mounted movement, and then shooting into position. And I would have a group of 3 or 4 people at a time, so they could get a lot of reps, a lot of good feedback of getting into the room fast. And then the second room, which was right beside it, again, was a corner fed room. I would just have one USPSA target on there in the room on a target stand, exactly set up just like the other room was. And what we were emphasizing was, and again, they were doing force on paper, shooting the USPSA target, but we were emphasizing getting into the room fast, not slowing down at all. And then the other thing is I would tell them was, okay, you've got to get 50% hits on the target at a minimum. Fire 4 to 6 rounds, and you've got to get 50%, which in law enforcement we know hit ratio, right, is pretty low. And a lot of guys were, kind of unsure of them being able to do that, it moving at that speed. But actually, we started getting upwards of 60% hit ratio with Sims rounds getting into the room, which was pretty good, And then
that's a really interesting, like, just for you to use those numbers and then say, yeah, that's pretty good. That really cuts against a lot of the guys that would be like, no, you need 100% hits all the time. They would just, keep saying that no matter what the circumstances are.
Right. And And our whole point, or my whole point was, and we talk in my agency a lot about what the hit percentages are, so guys understand what that is. But I wanted them to understand, hey, you can still move fast into this room, like we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, and you can still get hits. Now I understand it's UTM rounds. They're not getting the same recoil. Matt and I have talked about that a lot. They're not getting the same recoil as they would from a real gun, but it was getting them to understand that fast movement into the room and staying mounted with the gun and working on the visual piece with them as well. Does that make sense? So we were really working on the speed component for the quick movement and the visual piece. And then on their third run, I would put a blue piece of tape up on the target, a 1-inch piece of blue tape to give them a visual cue or a piece to look at when they came in the room. And then we started going to 100% hit ratio on by almost, I would say, 90% of the people that went through the training, which was, we put 90 plus people through the training. We had all of my department, and we had some other agencies from around us that came and wanted to go through the training as well. So it was kind of interesting.
It's funny that you're, for your agency, stressing the speed, right? That dynamic, because at least from what you see that's kind of released publicly, that's like counter to what you typically see in terms of clearing, scenario-based training.
Yes. Yep.
Like, why have you guys looking at that route rather than kind of the slow, deliberate, methodical type clears?
So we did it. There's two sections really, there's two things that we were talking about in the training. The first one is if we're going slower, the way that we describe that is, all right, you get into the building, you're on the floor, let's say it's the second story, and you're no longer getting stimulus, gunfire, people screaming, shell casings, whatever. Then that's when the slow methodical starts. Once they figure out where the person is, what we started talking about and discussing was, hey, listen, yeah, in all reality, what we're talking about, this is a hostage rescue. This is not, hey, slow and methodical, we need to go in slow. And then the other part of that is, I said several times, I'm like, show me any time where these incidents go slow, where you need to shoot slower and move slower. And nobody could show me that. Nobody could even bring up one incident of that.
Right. I mean, the tactics aside, I mean, because that will set dudes on fire.
Oh yeah, we're gonna burn the internet down with that.
But from
just to do it slow.
With not going for going fast. There's
But going fast is safer for you, right, Matt?
Yeah. I believe obviously there is some security and some safety that's built around, getting into the rooms quickly, and things like that from my experience. The problem is what I see, like from the training side, is it's significantly more difficult to move and shoot at real life paces rather than like a slow, deliberate pie.
Yes.
And even in the active shooter stuff, you see people doing that, still hanging on threshold assessment. And I still believe, that is brought to law enforcement because it's easier to execute than something that's more dynamic. Right.
Yep.
And
I agree.
Everybody ignores that.
So Matt, just so people, if they don't know, threshold assessments where people are looking at an opening in a doorway, like really slowly.
Right. And they would move across the doorway, pieing the doorway. There's tons of different ideas on how to using angles to their advantage. And then at some point, whether they move completely across the doorway, they make entry into the room in a limited fashion where it's like a limited penetration. They don't go very deep into the room, but they try to clear what they haven't cleared from the outside of the room. And I think you can argue there's all kinds of flaws with that, doing that during the day, in light, but then also in terms of if you were to take any active shooter, because that was the training that you're doing, active shooter type situation, there is a time component where you don't have time to your favor, and it forces that whatever technique or TTP you need to use, I think needs to be done very, very quickly.
Yes.
And the interesting thing from the training side is that is a huge departure from what I think anyone is doing, especially for patrol officers doing active shooter.
Yes,
right?
It is.
You're now asking them to do something that is not similar or not like anything they've ever done before in terms of it being dynamic, and then also putting an accuracy standard on Sims training. I like that. That's something you don't hear a lot of.
Yeah, it was. I was interested to see what, if any, pushback we got on that, and we didn't get any. Everybody was on board. They were like, "Yep, this makes sense." Like scoring the target, And this year I didn't get into like, scoring it out right and rack and stack everybody and seeing where everybody was at. But because again, it's Sims, I think that it's gonna be different with live ammo. But what I wanted to do was stress, hey, what we're doing on the range and moving quickly, like we did track the A zone this year. We did a couple other drills where they had them move fast and shoot. I wanted to show them how we can connect that from what we're doing on the range into active shooter training. And they liked it. They enjoyed it. And we stressed a lot, hey, listen, this is active shooter response. We're not saying this is an alarm at 3:00 in the morning where you need to slow down. And yeah, you should start to kind of peek corners or whatever that. We said, no, that's not what we're talking about. This is active shooter response, period.
Yeah. What was the takeaway when you guys broke out into, when you had the breakout sessions where it was smaller groups and isolating those skills? How did the officers receive that kind of, now you put them through a scenario, kind of throw them into the deep end at the beginning, and then break the pieces down for training throughout the day?
So they liked actually starting the day with a scenario, because they said, hey, this kind of felt like a true test. And I said, yeah, that was the whole point of this. We were trying to test you to kind of see where you were at, what you were going to do. And then they really only had, they had a 10-minute break. They took about a 50-minute lunch break, and then they came back, and then we started right back in the training. They really enjoyed not having a lot of downtime. And when we started the little breakout sessions, what they liked the most was there were only 3, 4, no more than 5 people in each group. So they got a lot of one-on-one with an instructor, lots of feedback. They were able to ask a lot of questions. We talked about it's okay to fail. That's why we come to training. If you fail here, this is okay. This is the place to do it.
Would you say that's another attitude that's a little different than what you might expect in law enforcement?
Yeah, it depends on the place. I mean, I've seen other places to where, and I think it's in every class, you'll have guys come in that, have kind of an ego and they don't want to fail. Our department, we talk about, listen, you're here to learn and ask questions in the training. We don't want to, we'll push them. What we say is we'll push you pretty hard, but not to the point you're going to fall off the edge of the cliff. But we're going to get you there and make you nervous and learn some new skills. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
No, I think it does. I think that's something that you miss with a lot of, especially the shooting training side for law enforcement, is it being challenging and pushing guys and asking them to do things that are difficult, right? I think if you look at most of the shooting training there, it's very outcome focused, and they want it to be perfect little group on the target, regardless of time. That is how they kind of quantify, hey, this shows you understand what's going on and you're doing well. Yes. Rather than, now we're we're going to break this machine a little bit. We got to figure out what's broken before we can even start to fix it.
Yes.
So how have you using the practical stuff, right? So I saw the video that you did with it, and Ben, I don't know if you saw
I didn't.
some of the entries. So in terms of like translating practical stuff into like a scenario, what it looks like, right, would be, it looks like with a strong wall CQB type mentality and a dynamic movement, it looks like 4 guys doing easy entry drill on the range.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was with my SWAT team.
Right. So you have 4 guys, like a stack of guys, come in along a wall, and
Yes.
they shoot as their feet are getting set up into position. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Yep.
But that's the part of the drill is like that's explained like, hey, you're going to shoot as you set up.
Yeah. Yes, that's what we were doing.
All right.
Yep.
And that was that piece of that training, that was not for the active shooter training. That was for my SWAT guys, us working specifically on, again, speed of movement, hostage rescue, strong wall into a room.
Yeah, no, this was, I think to me, it looked like you guys were doing the active shooter training as well.
No.
Target.
Yeah. Yes, we did. We had 2 targets in that room at that time.
Okay.
Getting guys to be able to do the visual piece, looking from one target to another. That again was that was my SWAT guys, what we were working on that day. And again, I used the blue tape idea, putting that on there so they could kind of still get into the understanding the visual piece a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's a key element, right? That is missing. You know, there's no discrimination, right? It's kind of gross discrimination for the training you were doing. Hey, you're going to see a target, shoot it. Where I think in an active shooter situation, right? If you were to take a school or a mall, it's not very difficult to kind of decide who's the bad guy with the gun.
Right.
So there's elements there, right? And I think too, one thing I like about your training was focusing on kind of the hard skills piece. Once we find the guy causing the problem, there's something that has to take place, right? There's going to be a fight.
Right.
Typically, where I think a lot of other active shooter training goes like, it's very focused on techniques or procedural stuff getting to the shooter, right?
Yes.
In terms of how are we going to move through this building? Well, I mean, if you take Uvalde's pretty easy. There's shooting going on in the building. You go to where the shooting is.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think getting very nuanced about how you get there in terms of clearing every classroom or systematic. I mean, it's pretty simple. You move down to where the shooting is happening, and then you have to deal with that threat.
Yeah. And that's so because we've had 3 at our department, 3 active shooter, active threat incidents. And that's how all of them occurred. There was, I guess on the first one, they were unsure at first, like where the shooting was, because when they stepped in the door, there was no shooting whatsoever. But the suspect had already shot himself and went down. So, but the other 2, I guess the second one, the guy heard our officers moving very quickly towards him, and then he sat down and took his own life. And then the third one you and I have talked about 100 times, which is where the officer started shooting at the suspect. It was an outdoor incident. And, so he shot him at like 89 feet was the first 2 rounds fired.
Yeah. And I think with all of that training, all of those situations for real, there's a dynamic nature to it. Like none of it is slow and deliberate. And that's what I like from hearing about this training that you're doing. You're taking the practical shooting basically, and then balancing speed and accuracy, having an accuracy metric, making it a little bit uncomfortable for guys, because if you're not comfortable doing track the A zone or shooting at that pace or moving at that pace, the scenario is going to be a little bit overwhelming.
Yes.
But it sounds good. It seems like the officers you put through it, they liked it. It was well received.
Yeah, it was very well received. They really enjoyed it. They actually wanted to do like the mini breakout sessions because that was like after lunch, so we had them for 2 hours. They wanted to do that even longer. They were like, "Hey, can we do this breakout session in the one of the other breakout sessions where one of the other breakouts was they stepped into a room, a victim stepped into the room, bad guy stepped into the room, and you had about 4 to 5 seconds to make the decision when you saw the gun come up of start to engage the guy. They wanted, and it was a force on force situation. They wanted to do my breakout and that breakout over and over and over again because they started seeing how important it was with the speed of movement, even when they were going to cover. You know, anybody that was not that aggressive, even moving to cover, they did not do well.
Yeah. So this type of training for your department, is this a huge, paradigm shift or shift in the way of thinking of how training should be done?
It has been, yeah. It's like I said, when we started it back in 19, after we shot with you and EJ the first time, and then we came down and shot with you and Ben in North Carolina. That's when I came back and really started showing everybody, I guess in the spring of 20, we really started taking everybody out to the range. I showed all my ordnance team guys, hey, this is what I think. This is what I would like the direction to see us go. And they liked it as well. So for us, it's not a huge paradigm shift because they're used to it over the last 3 years. But other agencies, yeah, there may be a little bit more of an issue with that.
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about this before, but for the ordnance team that you're on, and your SRT, it seems like they get really into it.
They do.
I know when you present some drills and you're shooting for them, what do you think is driving them this way?
I think what's driving them this way is they're seeing the results in their shooting. So they're not dry firing as much as, a lot of other guys are, probably in the competitive world, but they're starting to dry fire a little bit more because I have a dry fire gun set up for them that all the patrol guys can come in and use when they're on duty, targets, the whole thing. But everybody's starting to see how much better they are shooting each time that they run a drill or will go to the next drill. So there's that fun factor for them as well. It's more fun than just standing on a line and going, okay, well, here we are. We're all on the same line and we can shoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to compete against your bros, I think.
Yeah. And they enjoy that part of it, and then you'll start to see people like really getting into the competitive side. They're like, well, I want to shoot against, such and such. And then those guys start driving the competition side a little bit more. I thought I started introducing or talking about introducing, putting everybody in order from the top shooter down to the lowest shooter at the end of the year. I thought I would get a little bit of pushback on that, especially from 2 or 3 people that were like, they don't mind coming to training, but they get a little, worked up about it at times. And everybody was on board. They were like, yeah, that'd be pretty interesting to see where everybody's at. So really not a huge amount of pushback from everybody. So that was pretty impressive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I looked at the video you sent me, and to describe it, it's a stack, 4 guys come in a room.
Yep.
But fast.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's interesting that you're like, hey, the shooting's got to be. You just got to like make the shooting work at the speed you got to move.
Yeah, and so the other part of that in that video that you just saw, Ben, the guys were like, well, hey, can we slow down to ensure our hits? And I said, no, you can't slow down. Like, do not slow down at all. Like, you have to move fast. And after I shot that video, we've got them moving even faster into the room. Now, of course, the shooting, again, it's UTM. I get it. But I was working on the speed and the visual piece with them. So the accuracy started to go off a little bit, but we didn't have any misses off a target. So they started shooting more Charlies and Deltas, but it was good. It was a good learning experience for them. So, yeah.
Well,
nice.
That answers my question.
Yeah, good.
All right. Let's move on.
All right.
Let's move on.
All right. So let's talk about some dry fire stuff. So I've been doing, for whatever reason, I don't know, I think I was crazy when I did it. I decided to kind of commit 80 days of dry fire to a specific setup, to kind of saw some weaknesses in what I was doing from concealment and wanted to get better at it. And I've been really focused on that. What I found out had a pretty big issue the other day with being realistic with myself on what you actually see, Ben. And I know you've seen this a lot, right? You see a ton of dry fire videos or somebody doing something, the gun comes out really quick, right? And it's like 4 aces would be a good one to explain it. Gun comes out, you can tell the gun's not anywhere near their face. Shoot 2 rounds real fast, reload, shoot 2 rounds.
Yeah. So for the people who don't know that drill, 4 aces is you draw, shoot 2, reload, shoot 2. Basically, it's a gun handling check, right? So
Yeah.
you can clack off a pretty fast time on that if you're on the trigger before you even see the sights. And that's what guys do.
And I think what a lot of dudes will see is for me personally, dry firing, I don't see a huge difference in what I can do dry in terms of times versus what I can do live. Do you see like a big disparity in your own training?
No, but I'm pretty honest with myself with my dry fire.
Yeah. So that's where it kind of comes down to me, where I look at it is people aren't getting out of dry fire what they should be, right? The objective assessment of what you're seeing while it's happening and being able to honestly critique and like kind of motherfuck yourself about what's good and what's not good doesn't happen usually. Would you say that's true, or is that
no, that is true.
base?
Most people just, I mean, from what I've seen, because I have guys come to class and they're like, yeah, I dry fire all the time, and I'll watch them and they seem trained, meaning they're consistently doing the same thing every time, right?
Yeah.
Like I can tell they practice it, what they're doing, but they basically just either they wave the gun around in front of their face when they're trying to shoot fast. They just like look at Brown and wave the gun at it, or they're like riding the red dot or riding the front sight, shooting really slow when they want to hit stuff.
And what I noticed was, trying to, I'm pushing kind of performance side, from concealment, trying to be very, very aggressive with the manipulations, with the gun handling piece. And I had a part-time set that was pretty spicy, and kind of like assessing, like, am I seeing the dot after I pull the trigger, or am I seeing it before I pull the trigger? Threw the camera up. I ended up filming probably 30 or 40 iterations, and then sat down and watched them and started watching it in slow motion. And sure as shit, I'm pulling the trigger when the barrel is in attitudes that I wouldn't want it to be, where I wouldn't get the hits that I wanted to.
So what you're saying is just based on the muzzle from the video, just plainly watching it, it could tell you like, yeah, that's not what I want.
Yeah, it's pulling the trigger where, as the gun is kind of sliding up to my eye target line, might work at 3 yards, in close. But in terms of the big theme that dominates my dry fire training is kind of accountability and control. Like if I'm not in control and don't have really high levels of accountability, it doesn't really matter how fast it is. right? I want it to be consistent and clean, but I also want to be very aware and confident that, hey, those rounds would have went where they were supposed to go. And I think I've gotten that way from having some bad mistakes early on, where I was dry firing things. You take 4 aces is a good one because it's an easy drill to measure. There's a lot of historical measurements out, but I could consistently run 4 aces in under 2 seconds dry, but I was nowhere near that shooting it live.
So I see that a lot, or let me put it this way. I saw that a lot more. So that was my old material, was very part-time focused. So like when I started putting out dry fire books, it was tiered part-times, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and the advanced would be like kind of what I thought the time should be. And what happened there was people just stuck on intermediate and never went anywhere else if they were training a lot. So I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So I changed it in the material that came after. And kind of, well, I mean, I've done it a few different ways. So I had just the time, and then I changed the drills to make it where the drills measure concepts, not so much like specific standard practice setup stuff. Anyway, I've gone through a lot of iterations for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, and the reason for a lot of that is because you see guys, they just are a slave to the time. They see what the time is supposed to be for the drill and they make the time happen, but nothing else about their technique is right.
Right. And I think that's I was just having this conversation with Dustin where a lot of people would look at that in terms of like early on, reading your stuff, you kind of would focus on, hey, these are a set of standard exercise kind of GM goal times. And where people would look at that and look at, well, that's a goal time, but I made that goal time. It's like, no, you're confusing what that is. It's every single time you run it, it's under that time. Then I think you've achieved that goal, not that you got nice and warmed up and you hit that the one time, right? Because what you see is, I see a lot of people talk about what they're able to do, in terms of skills. Or if you take the draw, I heard recently someone's like, hey, my draw for one shot is consistently 0.8, 0.9 from concealment. And it's like, okay, I know what that takes. Like that is to guarantee an alpha, like, wow, that is fucking really fast. But now if you put that in the context of a bill drill, that single shot 0.8, 0.9 turns into 1-2 or 1-1-5 or 1-3 draw.
Well, then their grip's fucked up on the fast ones.
Right. And that's
they kind of lying to themselves about what they're doing.
I think there's a ton of lying to yourself. You get focused on this time element and not understand that really it's more of an accountability and control thing, right? Where you're able to execute a skill at a very high level, but with high levels of control.
Can I give a good example, Matt?
Yeah.
So I don't train on plate racks a whole lot because I don't have easy access to one at one of the ranges around me that I go to, and I don't really give a shit about plate racks, but I understand what you're trying to do. But I recently got the CZs with the dots. They're very, very capable, and I was shooting them a lot. And then on a day I happened to, because of work circumstances, have access to plate racks and unlimited ammo, like on the same day with my CZs, and I was really tuned up. So I was shooting the plate racks, and I shot some like incredible times, like way better than anything I've done in my life. But I've shot iron sights mostly, and I don't train on plate racks. I'll say that. But I got like a 188 to drive down a rack at 10 yards, like incredible times. But if I'm being honest with myself, what I was doing was drawing and doing a bill drill, and then just looking at each plate and hoping the gun went to them. There was no actual confirmation. It was just move my eye fast, like spot on the plates, and then hope that the gun did what it was supposed to do. And if I got lucky, it would do what it was supposed to do, and I could get an incredible time. Now, if I would lie to myself and think like, yeah, that's my skill level, or like that's going to happen on demand, when I see a plate rack in a match. You know, that's where that
Yeah.
starts to become a problem.
Yeah, and you see it with a lot of guys training dry versus a match, where, or even their own live fire training is completely different than shooting a match, because they'll go balls out in their training, but then as soon as you flip that switch where now you need to be accountable, we're going to measure this and score it, now they creep into like tons of like what I would consider over confirming almost every shot.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed recently was my lack of confirmation, or thinking I was shooting a certain confirmation level, wanting to shoot a certain confirmation level in a drill, realizing, hey, this isn't happening. Had to watch it on video to kind of prove it to myself. Yep, it feels like that's what you're doing. Video shows it, and then apply the correction. Because I think if you don't do that, if you're not honest in that way with your training, what happens is you'll go multiple session after session after session thinking something's good, or that you're getting it, and then you go to check it live and you really haven't developed at all, or you're not getting any better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Been pretty interesting. Obviously, I think the doing 80 days from concealment, what I'm taking, really the only big thing is really the gun handling piece. Shooting doesn't matter what holster the gun comes out of. Like, I don't think I shoot any different, kitted up for a scenario than I do, USPSA comp on a range. Well, the shooting piece is still the same. The theme, I'm still trying to make the bullets go where I want them to go as fast as I can get them there.
Yeah.
So Matt, why'd you start this 80 days of concealment? Just out of pure
Because he saw True Exodus's Instagram page. He knew what needed to happen.
Was it out of sheer boredom, or what happened?
No, it was no, not out of board. No, it was really honestly what I found myself doing is having so many different systems, and going from level 3 to concealment to comp setup to open top to rifle, and doing all of that. And I felt like, hey, I wonder if I just committed to one for a certain amount of time, because I used to do that. There was trying to make GM, go 2014, 2015. I was very focused on open top competition setup.
Yeah.
And built a lot of, skill from there, but then realized when I would shoot, ALS or a retention type holster for work, the only thing, a little bit of tune up in terms of the gun handling, the shooting was the same, right? The takeaways are the same, right? I don't train any different from a foundational skill side or like grip side or anything from concealment than I do from a competition rig. But honestly, it was just personal goals. And then it figured, hey, I'll just highlight exactly what I do, stay consistent with it, and see what I'm able to get in terms of performance at the end of just 80 days of training. A very concerted training. And
I think it'll be about as good as a guy could be from concealment.
Yeah, I think I definitely for myself have set some parameters on kind of going through the bullshit. Yeah, you see a lot of guys, what you see on Instagram in terms of, hey, this is what you see, a very small snapshot of real shooting, right? You see a guy that can consistently draw the pistol and whatever in under a second, and can shoot this real aggressive way, and that's the video you see. But then you see that, hey, if you put them with a little bit of stress in terms of a classifier in a stand and shoot type exercise, he's not shooting at the level that the videos are that he's demonstrating in terms of skill. Did I say that? I think I said that right. Yeah. So it's like there's a huge disconnect. So for me, I want to get better at this. I carry, pretty much every day. I carry for work nearly every day. So just wanting to put a little bit of effort into it. 80 days isn't very long, and see what I'm able to get out of it. That was kind of the intent. My intent.
Well, the biggest thing with Instagram that you see is that it is really a snapshot of people shooting. That's unrealistic. Like, how often do you see somebody's cold run? Like, they're cold shooting, no warm up.
Nobody ever talks about that. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's, yeah, and it is what it is. It's a marketing tool, but I also think it fucking damages perceptions of what guys like think is good.
Yes.
Absolutely. It totally fucks it up, actually. And I see it like kind of hurt students where they think like if they can't do a 160 build drill every time or whatever, like that there's something wrong with them, and they kind of get hung up on that. You know, like they'll have a solid, whatever part of their mechanics will be solid, but they'll have some weird perception about what they should be able to do from Instagram.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also too, it's like saying a 160 or 150 build drill, you watch it and you're like I would feel confident saying like I know what it takes to shoot like that, right? I think the draw was, you got a little lucky on the draw, scooped it right out really quick. But what did you see? Nothing. It's like confirmation 0.
Yeah.
Right.
And just running the trigger really fast. Yeah, it demonstrates a skill, like you're able to grip the shit out of the gun and pull the trigger really quick, shoot it really aggressively. That's great. But in terms of guys that are training for anything outside of the competitive arena where, hey, now I'm fighting with this gun or fighting with this tool, I think there's a different element that needs to be present in the training, right? And don't get hung up on these times, right? And to be really honest with it, you know, the difference between a 190 build drill and a 210 build drill is insignificant.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I've changed my classes a lot because of this issue, because of people chasing the times.
Yeah. And I think it's important, you know, I will say, you know, probably 10% of my dry fire training, I'm even using a timer. And of that 10%, half of it is I'm only using it as a start signal. Right. And occasionally I will check something in terms of breaking down times, you know, what I think I want to, if I'm shooting like a transition drill with a varied target array and I want to draw to a simulated 25-yard target, transition to a 10-yard target, and then over to a 7-yard target, like an accelerator setup, you know, I can break down those metrics, put a par time, and just check that I'm able to execute fundamentals at that speed. But then most of the training that I do goes back to no timer. I'm just putting in maximum amount of performance, max aggression, trying to give it everything I got with high levels of consistency. If I'm not consistent, then I'm backing off the performance side and the time really becomes irrelevant.
What any good questions coming from guys that are watching your videos from the concealment stuff?
No, dude, to be honest, I mean, I get some questions. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I spend, I think, probably too much time answering questions. You know, I answer everything. And I'm kind of like Ben's model where you get questions and you answer it with a video that you post the video.
Right.
Where I end up.
I prefer that. You get a question that's interesting, just do a video. And
yeah, a lot of the questions are guys like, hey, how are you structuring the training, and what are you coming up with? Like, is it like a system or things like that? Like, is there a set thing? And I try to drive people to know, like, I have goals for myself, right? And I try to keep each session to 1 or 2 concepts or 1 or 2 principles that I'm trying to train. And then I just vary those principles across the whole spectrum of things that I assess. Hey, this is what I need to be good with.
Right.
Kind of focusing on stuff that I'm not good at that I want to develop. And then I spend the bulk of the time doing that. And then I'll come and visit things that I know I have a pretty good handle on. just as a reinforcement type exercise. But I'm definitely not practicing in sessions stuff that I'm comfortable doing.
That's good. But still just trying to build that consistency, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, I even after 20 days, I've been pretty diligent, 2 to 3 sessions. I think there was only one day where I only got one session in. But I definitely start to see some changes just after 20 days.
Yeah. Nice.
So
nice.
It's good.
Speaking of videos, I saw your video there earlier there, Ben, talking about the fitting the gun to your hand.
Yeah, I like to say controversial things.
Yeah, it was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And
there's some guns though that if you just hold them, it just you shoot better, right?
Like what would it be, like a PDP? Is that what I'm supposed to say?
I think SIG. It's SIG is what you're supposed to say.
Oh yeah, it's a SIG.
SIG.
Yeah.
That's what Mike Glover says is the best.
Yeah. The SIG.
Mike Glover knows all about that sort of thing, so
right.
Defer to his wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the best till another company pays you a little bit more, and then their stuff's
Then
the
you
best.
have a different best, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
That's at least that's an objective measure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How much money
Which
you're getting
company
paid
is
from
paying
them?
you the most money to show their bullshit?
Yes.
Well, then that's the best one.
Yeah. Well, it does happen often in this industry, unfortunately, right? Yeah, man. Crazy.
All right, guys. So one more topic. I did put up an interesting thread, or maybe you didn't think it was interesting, but I put up a thread about USPSA, and I just made a quick video on Instagram asking about guys if you came to one match or 2 matches and you didn't come back, why not? Just out of curiosity. Did you guys see that?
I did.
I did. I thought it was good. And I will say there's all of the answers I think are very consistent with.
There's like 200 comments. There's quite a few.
Yeah, with what I see in North Carolina in Area 6, it's spot on with everything.
Wait, you're saying so the main complaints? What did you say they were?
So it's like not as welcoming as people think it is.
Yes.
Definitely the fuddy type behavior where, hey, this is your first match, looking to DQ a guy, and then there's also like just an over the top bravado,
arrogance,
from the arrogance that, hey, you don't do this, you're brand new, and it's like let's be honest, man, like you don't shoot that good. The guys that are generally perpetuating that, it's not going to be like, a state champion GM or high level M class shooter that's not welcoming. Those guys typically are very helpful, right? It's kind of the middle of the road shooter that's very fuddy and kind of BOC-ish.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I saw in there, a lot of guys talking about how long it takes to shoot a match.
Dude, I'll tell you what, that is my biggest complaint I've shot Sir Walter quite a few times, and I have left that match midway through it more than I finished it. Stupid squad size, 20 plus dudes. You spend,
in a squad,
12 seconds of shooting and an hour and a half of waiting.
All right.
Wow.
So what would you think of this as a match format? Just as an idea. Open squatting, meaning you'd show up at a certain time, like 9, 9:10, 9:20, 9:30, and then you'd go, but you'd move through the match in like a squad of 5 people or 4 people, and you just shoot through it really quick. Which then they start a new squad every 10 minutes, and they'd start squads for like 3 hours.
So
something like that.
I would love it. The NC section match runs like that. Very small squads. It's resourced very, very well. You move through that match super fast. I would love it. For a lot of guys, I think that come to matches, that's like their social activity.
It is.
Yes.
But
for many
they
people.
don't. Yeah, they don't have an issue with going and spending, from 10 till 4 in the afternoon shooting a 6-stage match. Where I'm like, hey, I want to come shoot the match, see how I perform, and then get out of there. I'm not
Roll the fuck
interested
out.
in kind of hanging out for a long time. I'm coming there to compete, to see it, kind of check on training and then move on from that. And
Yeah.
I don't think that mentality it's not the most common mentality. A lot of guys just like to hang out.
I think the only thing you may have a problem with that is having with the smaller squads in that time is you may feel like you're running a little bit because you're pasting very quickly and then you're up to shoot and then you're right back into pasting.
Yeah,
quick.
so that is how it feels. And then
Yeah.
there are some clubs that run this way.
Really?
Yeah, and
Okay.
there's the other drawback is you have people kind of get away with more stuff as far as loose enforcement of rules.
Mm,
Because if
I
you
can
have
see
three dudes that you are really close with all them, there's just a lot less.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think
whatever.
that's.
But it would get you through there faster.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a club match, yeah, I'm sure that happens. I shot Cowtown in Arizona the last time I was out there, and it was kind of like that. We went through squads, and I think there's no way to mitigate that, right? Guys that want to loose enforcement of the rules and things like that, it's gonna exist.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, a club match. Yeah, from a competitive equity standpoint, it kind of sucks. But really, I'm there to shoot, to test me.
Yeah.
And see what I'm doing, and then move on from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Going back to talking about how people act at matches. There was a guy, I was at a match last year, just a local match, and there was a brand new guy there. It was his first time, and everybody was very welcoming except for one guy who was an open shooter. And, this guy had the shirts and all the gear and all that. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to be high level. And he was a A-class shooter, and it was raining that day. So they had to clear bags over the targets. And this new guy didn't know, hey, pick up the bag and tape up the holes. He just started putting the tape over the holes on the plastic. And this guy literally lost his mind and started screaming at the dude and basically called him a fucking idiot and said, you shouldn't even fucking be here if you don't know what the rules are. And I kind of looked at him and I said, hey man, this is literally his first match and he'll probably never come back because of the way you're treating him. And the guy didn't. The guy never came back for that exact reason, So,
Yeah, I mean,
just ignorant.
No, I think it is. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Today we got news they banned Practical Shooting Insights as well.
Yeah, what was that about? Why did that happen?
Oh, he's been reporting on them a lot. I think people are going to see more reporting from him in the coming days. He made some accusations about ammunition and sponsor materials going to Jake Martins, and apparently all that's true. That's been verified. So I think you'll be seeing more stuff soon.
That's
interesting.
It's amazing that USPSA as an organization sees that as this is going to shake out well for them in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I think at this point there's been enough stuff highlighted that the organization is so broken it's beyond repair. Really.
Yeah, you'd have to throw everybody off the board completely out and start over.
Yeah, that's the big problem is they set the bylaws, and then now you need 7 of 9 votes on the board to change any of them. So it's kind of going to run the. Well, yeah, you have the president to vote.
Yeah.
So you have 8 area directors, and then but 7 and 9 to basically change the way anything works.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a tough situation as far as digging out of it.
Yeah.
Guys.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
We have gone about an hour. What do you say we call it?
Yeah, man.
Wonderful Redneck podcast. Listeners, if you have a question, put it down below. We'll do more shows.
Absolutely.
Yes. Gotta